But like a good cooking show, since you guys, sounds like you guys kind of get it of what we're doing here, I want to move on to another stage of this project. So I have stage 2, where I've actually added a background to make things more interesting, and I put in a photo in the background there that I started replicating. It's the polar ice caps melting, and I have a quote that's about the environment that she said, this author. I want to talk about using the brushes, the paintbrush and the blob brush. We've got some topics to cover to do the fine details. So we'll talk about methods of creating fine details. I also want to introduce you to a really exciting tool. If you've got, for example, if you've got an image that has a lot of something, like this background photo has a lot of melting ice chips. So I could use a few different options for that. I could make a custom brush, make a scatter brush to make my life a lot easier, rather than having to draw every single little piece in piece by piece. I could create a few and then brush on a bunch in a few brush strokes. Or I can use a really cool tool that is literally, it's a spray can tool called the symbol sprayer tool. I could create a custom symbol and spray on a bunch of something. And this is great for if you have a scene with a lot of something, like a lot of pebbles, a lot of seashells, a lot of rocks, or a texture. Maybe you have a fuzzy sweater with a lot of little fuzz balls everywhere, and you want to just spray on that texture. You can create the basic shapes for the texture and spray on a ton of them. So we'll also be looking at the drawing modes and how to draw inside of a shape, or draw behind a shape, and how that can be useful. Well, I'm going to start with doing some fine line details, like on her hair. You may have noticed that I've added some shapes that have lots of corners and curves to help to create the feeling of texture, but it's not enough to really capture a natural look. So at this point, after I've created these separate shapes to create the highlights in her hair, then I can go further and draw out some details. But I need a brush for that. So I'm going to go to Window and bring up my Brushes panel. And you could use a brush from the brushes library here. So I could go to, in my brushes panel, I've already brought it up. You can find like a tapered stroke by going to the library here and choosing an artistic, and it's in artistic ink, and going down to the, scrolling down, and you'll find some various tapered strokes. So the one I selected is this one. So I just clicked on it. If you click on it, it'll add it. I already have it added, so I can just delete that. Delete, yes. Okay, I already have it added here. So if I select that, then I'm just gonna draw something with it on the side so you can see how it looks. Maybe I'll just double click on this and choose a color here that you can see, hopefully. And then I'll take my paintbrush tool and draw something out with it. Let me go to properties just so you can see and give that a thicker stroke. So the tapered stroke kind of gives each end a little point, but I don't quite like the shape. I mean, it'll work for creating some fine details, and you can, when you make the stroke weight a lot thinner, then you've got this nice thin stroke that comes to a sharp point from end to end, and that will work. let me bring up my swatches now under Window, Swatches. Now I've created a set of swatches ahead of time that have different colors in them. So if I were to, and how did I do that? Let me show you. So let me turn off my photo. I went back to my regular way of working. So if you select a bunch of artwork with a bunch of different colors, oops, I'm gonna hold down Shift here. So if you select a bunch of different colors in your art, and then you click on a new color group, that's a fast way to get a color group. So I could call this color group Hair Colors. Oops, I've got it on caps lock. Hair Colors. And it's based, the colors that will be generated are based on selected artwork, include swatches for tints is checked. I'll say okay there. So now it's given me a little color group with swatches that match colors that I've selected already in these shapes. And that's helpful for when you're using the paintbrush because you need to put colors on the stroke. So then let's say I want to put this color on the stroke here. So I've got my stroke in the front here. I'll just turn off my fill because we don't need color on the fill when we're using the paintbrush. So I'll choose this color, for example, on my stroke. I'll take the paintbrush and then I've got my tapered stroke selected. There's my brushes. I'm going to just pull that brushes panel out so I can make sure I see which one's selected. And right now I'm using my mouse to paint with. But I'll show you with my tablet as well. But you can, it's optional to use a tablet. You can do this with a mouse. Of course, it's nicer to use a tablet. I'll show you my tablet in just a moment. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to look at my photo and kind of see where I want to add additional colors. And I might just draw them in while I'm looking at my photo. And it's a good idea maybe to make a new layer where you put your fine details. So maybe I'll click and call this layer, I just added a new layer, call this layer Hair Strands. So I have my hair strands layer highlighted, and then I'm just gonna draw here. And then I'm gonna turn off and see what that looks like. So I could draw while I'm looking and then kind of just draw these little strokes in. But it is nicer to draw with the tablet. But you could draw some finer details that way. And then I can kind of zoom in and still make adjustments with my direct selection tool. If I don't like kind of where that landed, I can really go in and fix every last hair on her head if I want to, if I have the time. But that takes a long time. So I might not want to do that. I might want it just to be able to draw it in and let it land where it lands. But things can get messy, so you can make adjustments as you go, and then you might want to change the weight of strokes, make them thinner. So I can go very thin with certain strokes. Okay, so that's using the tapered stroke. Maybe I want to make my own custom. So if you want to make your own shape, then you can use the pen tool or the shape tools. And the idea is you need to make a flat horizontal line and then of artwork, and then you can turn that into a custom art brush. So I'm going to do that with my pen tool now. So I'm going to start by clicking to make a nice sharp point on one side, and I'm going to click and drag to make a curve, and then I'm going to line up to my first point with just a click to make another sharp point, and then I'm going to click and drag underneath my curved point somewhere to the left, and now I'm going to close my shape. So I'm making, instead of relying on the tapered stroke, which has kind of a pencil end to each end. Maybe I want a different shape. So I'm making my own shape here, which I made with the pen tool. And I like to use a light color because then I have more options later to change the color. So I just want to make sure that the 2 points on either end are lined up to each other so that this is completely flat, because then when I paint, it'll follow my hand movement exactly if it's completely flat on a horizontal. So I'm going to select my shape, and then to make a custom brush, you can drag any artwork into the brushes panel, or you can click the little plus button, and then the new brush options will pop up, and I can choose any of these options. I want an art brush, so I'm going to click art brush and click OK. So then I'll call this hair strand. And if I want to be able to change the color, then I'll go to colorization and I'll choose hue shift. And notice you can change the direction that you're drawing in. If you draw a vertical line, then you could use the vertical arrows, but I find better results with the horizontal, drawing a shape along a horizontal. And I'm just going to say OK there, and I'm going to deselect that shape. And now see, I have my own brush in brushes that I can select, and then I can take my paintbrush tool and click and drag and draw out a very nice looking hair strand that comes to a fine point on each end. So this is great for making those little fine tip ends. And I could even select brush strokes that I made with the tapered stroke. I'm just selecting these and change them to my stroke, but my stroke is a little too fat. So I can double click on my stroke, and I can adjust the width with this slider here to be very narrow if I want. And then I can say OK, and it'll ask, do I want to apply to the strokes that I've already drawn in, or leave those strokes alone and apply to the future strokes. I'll go ahead and click apply, and now I've switched these to my stroke. I like my stroke better than the tapered stroke, my custom brush. And then I can look at my photo again and then find other places where I might want to draw in my own stroke. So I'll take my paintbrush and let's see, and then I can just kind of draw it in. But oops, Command Z that. I want to make sure I'm on the right layer, because I was on the background, so I'm going to highlight hair strands layer and then try drawing. There we go. So I can just draw, but I want to introduce you to my my new tablet. I think it was $59. It was the lowest price Wacom on the market. I needed to replace my old one because George helped me upgrade my computer, and then my computer was an operating system that was too advanced for my old tablet that I had since 2010. So now I had to upgrade. And George has some tablets that I believe you can check out with him. So if you send me a message, send me an email if you're interested in going to the school. George, our IT administrator, has ordered carrying cases. So I believe that he would be able to set you up with a tablet if you want to go to the school and take one home and use it. Or you can, I got this on Amazon. This is the Wacom One. And I've always liked the Wacom brand because of the control that you have. So using the tablet, what you can do that's cool is you can set pen pressure. So and let me just go over here and show you. So I'll start up here with these brushes, the calligraphy brushes, what you can do. So let's say I want to use this brush here. Or no, I'll go to this brush. So I'm going to double click on this brush here that's called 15 point round. I'm going to double click that. So you can change things here, like I'll start from the bottom, the size of the brush here. And by default, usually these are all set to fixed. But if I want to use pen pressure, I can change this, have the size. I can, instead of fixed, I can choose pressure. And then automatically I'll have a variation slider. So I can set my size to a certain size, like 7 points here. And then I can crank up the variation to create a range. So that when I apply very light pressure with my pen on my tablet, I can make a very fine line. And as I bear down heavier and heavier pressure, I can make the line as thick as the size is set to. So I can make the thickest I can go is 7 points because I set my size to 7 points. And I can do that with roundness. You can change the roundness and make like a calligraphy stroke with a flat brush. You can change the angle, and you can try choosing pressure for those two. But I'm going to leave the roundness and the angle back to 0. So the angle, I'm going to go back to 0, and the roundness is back to 100. And I've just set my size to pressure and at 7 points, and I'll say okay. So now using this brush here with my pen, just go make sure I'm on my brush tool. Then I can go very light. And then as I apply heavier and heavier, I can go thicker, light to thick. So light to thick. Oops. And let me just move that over here. So everything that I've been creating with my paintbrush so far does this look like an open path that I made or a closed path? Do these strokes, do they look like open paths or closed paths?
Open.
Open, that's right. These are just lines that are stroked. But I want to introduce you to another brush that's hiding under here called, if you click and hold on the paintbrush tool, you'll find underneath there is another brush called the blob brush tool, which is really cool. And the blob brush tool you can also set to work with pen pressure. With the blob brush, you can select these brushes, these calligraphy brushes, to work with the blob brush. So this brush is already selected. So I'm going to draw with this brush that I've already set up using the blob brush. I'm going to just Command Shift A to deselect. And now I'm just going to draw something down here with the blob brush. So you tell me what you think the difference is. So I'm going to draw very light to thick. Or I can go thick to thin. Thick to thin. And I have a lot of control with using the tablet, that I could go light and make a thin stroke, or heavy and make a thick stroke. Okay, but now let's see, when I select the strokes with the direct selection tool, when I select these strokes that I've made with the blob brush, do these look like open paths or closed paths?
It looks like they're closed.
Yes, so that's the difference between the blob brush and the paintbrush. The paintbrush will always create just stroked paths that are open, and the blob brush will always create shapes. So if you wanted to make something like a filled in shape, like the shape of a heart, for example, what tool do you think would be better to go with? The blob brush or the paintbrush? If you wanted to paint a shape, should you do that with the blob? Right. Why would you not want to do that with the paintbrush? Any ideas? So so I'm on the blob brush now, so I can draw this heart like this. And as long as I'm drawing with the same color, it'll fill it all in. And messed up a little bit there. And then it'll just give you just an outlined shape. But if I were to do that with the paintbrush tool, it'll look the same, but let's say I click and I'm dragging and I'm lifting and I'm just filling this area in like that. When I go and I select this, the direct selection tool, it's a mess, right? It's a mess of excessive points that you don't need. It's just a bunch of open paths. And you don't want to have that. That's gonna be unnecessary points. Why is it not good to have too many points when you don't need them?
Well, one, it can slow down the computer.
Right.
Slow it down on our end as well.
Exactly. It can crash your system. In some cases, if you have too many points, you can't even save the work. Maybe some of you experienced that with your pattern, because you start replicating graphics over and over again. Like if you're making a pattern and this file can't even save, it'll take forever to save. So you don't want that, and it's a hassle to make adjustments to. I can't even make adjustments to this shape very well because there are just too many points. It's a headache. This is a lot better with less points. This is a little messy down here, but I could use a tool like the smooth tool and smooth things out, or delete points with my pen tool, and then things are much more manageable. Then I can just grab a point and move it and to adjust my shape. Less is more when it comes to anchor points, but I don't need these. So just introducing you to those. Okay, so now with if I want to draw some, also with the art brushes, when you want to use art brushes and adjust them to pen pressure, you can double click. Like if I, let's see, any of these brushes are the art brushes. So even my custom brush, I can double click on that. And now if I want to set it to work with pen pressure, instead of choosing fixed for the width, I could choose pressure. And then I have two sliders. So I have one slider that will be, that I can go bring the thickness way down, that's 1%, and then the other slider can go thicker. I want this to be a thin brush, so I don't want to go too thick on it. But it'll just give me a range. And then I can say okay. It'll ask if I want to apply to my existing strokes. I'll just say leave to not mess with anything I've already done. And then I can try using my paintbrush tool with my hair strand brush. With the art brushes, you cannot use your blob brush with the art brushes, but you can use the blob brush with the calligraphy brushes. And you can also just double click on the blob brush and change the settings within the blob brush tool. So if I wanted to adjust the size of the blob brush and set it to pressure, I could do that, which is already set, and then crank up the variation all the way. And then as long as I don't have anything selected in brushes, then when I paint with the blob brush, it's going to use the settings on the blob brush, not on any of these brushes, because these brushes are not selected now. So now this is the blob brush settings. But I want to go back to the paintbrush and go to my hair strand, and then I can choose. And always, whether you're using the blob brush or the paintbrush, you put the color on the stroke. It's funny because in the end, the blob brush turns into a shape, so the color is on the fill, but when you are assigning the color, you always, for either of the paintbrushes, paintbrush or blob brush, you put color on the stroke. So I'm gonna turn that off. Whoops. Deselect, Command Shift A, and put my stroke in the front, and then I can choose a color to paint with next. I can choose my hair strand and then try painting some hair strands with my custom brush that's set to work with pen pressure now. So the feel of painting with this is a lot more natural, painting with the tablet, and it should give you a better look too. But you don't have to for this assignment. But it'll help with the texture so that the hair will start to look natural. Now let me just show the photo. And you can use your tablet like a mouse as well. When I'm hovering, I'm not actually dragging the pen. It's hard to tell in the camera, but I'm just hovering. It's just moving my mouse, and then I can actually click on things. I can click on the selection tool by just tapping the tip of the pen to the tablet. And to draw, of course, I'm dragging the tip of the pen along the tablet, but I can select a different color for my brush. Let me just look at my photo. Okay, so maybe I want a lighter color, so I could choose a lighter color and then draw some lighter hair strokes there. And you might also want to try generating additional brush, let's see. So now let me choose some different colors here. Okay, so another thing you can do is you can blend brush strokes together. So I've got these brushes here, and if I want to create texture with the hair, let me just see, maybe this one, let me just pull this hair, this little piece got away. So one thing you can try is to select multiple hair strokes. Let me just make one of these thicker. And different thicknesses here. And different colors. Okay, so just like I did with the nose and I blended some shapes together, you can also use blending to generate more in-between shapes with hair. So to create more texture, to more strands of hair at once, so you don't have to feel like you have to draw every single strand of hair. And it goes a long way once you, like if you created shapes that create texture, and then you need a little bit of drawing here and there, and it'll really start to bring it to life. But another approach you could take is you can blend strokes together to generate more. So let's see how that works. If I select this one, I'm going to select these four. I'm shift clicking now. And then I can go to Object and choose hover over Blend and Make. And now it's adding additional in-between shapes. But I want to go to my Object and Blend options. And I can, instead of smooth color, I can specify steps and decide how many do I want in between each. Maybe I want to generate 3 in between my original hair strands, 3 additional hair strands. So I say okay. So it's just added a whole bunch more in there. So that's kind of nice. And then I can go to with my direct selection tool, I can drag on the originals and pull and tug on the original 4 hairs, and it will update everything in the blend to kind of flow and transition from one to the next. So instead of having to draw each one individually, I just have 4 here, and then I've in my blend, it's generating in between each of those 4, 3 more. So it's a way to replicate and then have more control rather than ending up with a mess like this. This got a little messy up here. So then I could get rid of some of these if I don't want them, to start over and try something different. You can use my group select tool, and that's where it's handy to have things set apart in separate layers, because then I can go to my hair. Let's see, where's my hair layer? Hair strands. Hair above, is it this one? I think I got, oh, here it is. This layer here. No, yeah, this layer here. So I can lock this layer down, and then I can more easily drag, select, oops, but I think I just moved something I didn't want to move because I didn't have it locked down. Let me undo that. So let me lock the background, and then as long as I have things locked, I can kind of drag a marquee over certain things and delete, right, and try again. So I can then draw in some hair, additional hair strands up there with my paintbrush. Choose a color, be on the right layer, on the hair strands layer, and then I can kind of like draw in some hair strands here, but it might look better to use a blend. Or not. Okay, so that's starting to look more natural. She needs some more natural hairs down here too. So look at always consult the photo, and then I can kind of draw hair strands. Try blending them together, so I could select this one, and this one, and blend, object, blend, make, and then check my options, blend options, specified steps, maybe put 3 or 4, maybe 4 in between. Okay, so now it just made this adds a multitude of in-betweens, and then I can control the originals and work with that. So that's a way to generate a lot in between, and then you can control a few, and then it will control all the in-betweens. So it's a way to keep things a little neater. And I could do, like, I could still select one of these and change the color of this one so it blends a different color in. Maybe like a darker color or a lighter color. Okay, so it's starting to look more natural like hair. Now you might notice that I did a custom brush on the beads. I don't. It took a little time, so I didn't want you to sit and watch that. But these are all shapes that I created. I put an effect on this little circle. I put a Gaussian blur by going to effect and blur and Gaussian blur to create the soft light on this. So it's just 2 shapes. A bigger shape and a smaller shape, and then some other shapes here to create her beads. And so these shapes, I just lined up in a line. I selected the artwork and then I clicked on new brush. And I chose art brush, just like I did with my little hair strand. And now I have it. I've got my own custom brush. I named it beads. And so then I can select beads. And then with my paintbrush, I can draw out the beads. So that's what I did to create the necklace. I made a custom brush and then I painted in paint strokes with that custom brush applied to it. So you can do that to save time if you have maybe you have a pattern on clothing and you can draw in the pattern. I'm gonna make something else that resembles the snow chips. So maybe I'll go to my background layer. And well, it's about time to take a break. So when you come back, I want to show you how the symbol sprayer tool works to spray on a ton of something. And I also need to get into text. So we're going to talk about what you can do with all the different tools that go along with text when you come back. So some important topics to cover. It's 7:47 and I know you guys are only supposed to be here until 7:30, but I'm gonna keep going so that you get the whole lecture today, and you're welcome to stay or watch the video later on your own time. Okay, so I'll be back in 10 minutes. So it's 7:47 and you can come back at 7:57 to see the rest.